Hello, my name is Dr. Laura Davis, and this is a short video with some tips for writing an analysis essay. So first, follow the instructions and make sure to follow the word count. You can go a little bit over or a little bit under, but stay within 100 or 200 words over or under. Okay, so you need to kind of choose a thesis statement that's going to work within the word count of the assignment. The topics are jumping off points, so you don't have to answer. Sometimes in my essay questions I put a lot of questions in the essay topics. You don't have to go in and systematically answer those one by one. The topics that I write are meant to be jumping off points, and then you go and you create your own thesis statement and your own argument from the ideas that I give you with the topics. Please ask me if you don't understand a topic that you're interested in or any of the topics. Please ask me to clarify. Make sure that you understand all the terms and the terminology in the topics. Sometimes I use literary terminology, and you might need to look at your glossary of literary terms or ask me for clarification on those terms. So do make sure that you understand the essay topics, but also don't feel that you're limited by them. Like I say, they're meant to be kind of jumping off points for you to go and make your own argument and expand on, okay? So yeah, take the topic and develop your own thesis statement out of it. I never give you the thesis statement in the topic. That work you do on your own. So you take the topic, and I don't want to see a repetition of the topic as if it's the thesis statement. You do need to develop that into your own argument and thesis statement based on the topic or the subject. An analysis essay does not need to incorporate research into it. So later you'll have an opportunity to write a research essay where you'll be looking at secondary sources. At this point, with the analysis essay, it's meant to be an analysis of the primary text, in other words, the short stories that we're studying in class. So you certainly don't need to go out and do research and bring in other voices and other scholars' voices into this. It's your analysis of the short story based on what we've learned in class and so on. If you choose to bring in secondary sources, you can do that. That is an option at the second year level. I know that many of you have had experience bringing in secondary sources, and you should have all had that experience in your first year English course, so that you can bring that here. So if you want to bring in secondary sources, you may do that. I always ask that you use 3, generally 3 to 5 in an essay of this length, 1,500 words. You need more than one voice if you're going to bring it in to show that there are different opinions on the topic, but you don't want too many either. The fact that it's an analysis essay means that even if you are going to bring in secondary sources, which I have said it's not required, but if you do choose to do that, you still want to make sure that your analysis is the priority, that it doesn't become a survey of what other people have said about the work. I'm interested in your argument, your analysis of the primary text. And if you want to bring in secondary sources to support your point or to argue against, that's fine, but your argument needs to be central. Okay, in terms of the structure of the essay, and this you'll be familiar with other English courses and essays that you've written. So you need an introduction, you need middle paragraphs, and you need a conclusion. It doesn't matter how many middle paragraphs you have, that is up to you. So it depends how many points that you want to make, and that will be based on your reading of the text and how you understand the text and how you understand your argument, right? With your argument, working with the text, you may only have 2 points that you want to make, or you may have 4 points that you want to make that support your argument. So if you're thinking that you will have each point explained in one paragraph, if you have 4 points, you'll have 4 middle paragraphs. If you have 2 main points, you'll have 2 paragraphs. So you need to kind of think about how many points you have to make within your argument. And then you also want to think about the length of the essay, right? So if the assignment is a 1,500 word essay, you want to make sure to think about how many paragraphs, how many points you can make within that space, right? If you had the task of writing a master's thesis in front of you and this thing was going to be 80 pages, you know, you have a whole different kind of argument to think of and points to think of that will be much bigger and more complex. So it's a bit of a skill that you have to develop in terms of taking an argument or an opinion that you can back up with a certain number of points that will fit into the word count of the assignment. So intro, middle paragraphs, there's no set number that you need to have, but just work within the word count. I think within 1,500 words, you may have two would be pretty long middle paragraphs. You probably have more than two. You probably will have 3 to 5 middle paragraphs is my guess. Maybe 6, it's hard to say, but you need to fit within the word count, and some of those paragraphs might be longer and some of them might be a little bit shorter. Okay, here's what you need in each of those components. So the intro, the middle paragraphs, and the conclusion. For the introduction, you need to provide context and explain the subject of the essay. Okay, so the context would be like state the author's first and last name, the text you're analyzing, or text if you're doing 2 of the stories, maybe a little bit of context for the time and place that the story was written or the setting that it takes place, or both. Okay, so context, subject, what it's about, what works are you analyzing. That information needs to be upfront in the intro. You also, of course, need to have your thesis statement in the intro. So explain obviously in your own words what the argument is going to be in terms of your analysis of the text. And if you want, you can briefly indicate the points that you'll be discussing that back up your thesis statement. So if you have 4 points, a paragraph for each, you may briefly mention each of those in the same order that you present them. Okay, so you want context, you want the subject of what your essay is going to be about, you want your thesis statement, which is the most important thing, your argument, and you might want to also reiterate the points that you will be stating, one for each paragraph throughout, in the order in which you'll proceed with them. Middle paragraphs. Okay, so for each middle paragraph, you need to think about the structure with those 2. You need a topic sentence, which should function like a mini thesis statement. It should be an opinion, not a fact or description, and it should be a kind of a sub-point of the overall argument or thesis of your essay. So you need a topic sentence usually it's in the first sentence of the paragraph. You need evidence to support the topic sentence. So as I say, the topic sentence is like a mini argument, right, that relates to the larger argument. So you want the evidence to back that up. So that evidence in an analysis essay for English will be provided either by quoting from the text or paraphrasing from the text. Then you want an explanation or analysis of how the evidence supports the point. Okay, so you've done a topic sentence, a mini point there, you've had some evidence to prove the point. Now you have to explain how the evidence proves the point. And finally, you can do a concluding statement summing up what the paragraph has argued. In a sense, these middle paragraphs are like mini essays. Okay, and in the conclusion for your essay, you want to do a couple of things there. First, you want to restate your argument or your thesis. In other words, you want to remind your reader what you've argued in the essay. Keeping in mind, of course, that your reader has already read the whole essay, but just remind them, this is what I argued in the essay. As you can see, here is what the situation is, what I've argued, what my opinion is. And you've seen me argue that through the whole essay. Okay, so reiterate your thesis, your argument for the essay. Remind your readers what that argument was. And the second thing you want to do in a conclusion is explain the broader implications of that argument. In other words, why should we care about it? Explain what the significance of that argument is. Why is it important? You know, you won't want to say this explicitly, but why did you choose to make this argument, right? So 2 things in the conclusion. Restate your argument and explain why that argument is important. Okay, finally, a couple more things I want to say about for tips for the essay. What I'm looking for. 3 things I'm looking for in an essay. The first is depth of analysis. I want to see deep, sophisticated thought analyzing the text. And I want to see details to support your argument rather than vague or general kind of essay which doesn't get into those details. So depth of analysis. The second thing I want to see is strong organization. And I'd be looking here at both the overall level, the whole essay, and in terms of individual paragraphs as well, that they are well organized and that it's easy for a reader to follow. And finally, I'm looking for clear writing with as few grammatical mistakes and awkward phrases and so on as possible. Okay, so the three things I'm looking for in an essay are depth of analysis, strong organization, and clear writing. And for more details on this, you can look at the rubric that I've provided for the essays. So review the rubric, review all the materials on Blackboard in the module related to essay writing. And finally, start early. Write drafts of your essay. The essays are a significant portion of your grade for the entire course, so make sure to plan your time accordingly. There will be a couple of essay workshops that we will do in live time and will be recorded for you. That's all for my tips for writing the analysis essay. Best of luck.